know plenty fans, I know plenty fiends. Bitch, I'm chasing goals, I ain't chasing dreams. A lot of people stuck in a place they never seen. It's a cold world, best friends turn to enemies. People come, people go, a lot of memories. Ain't no second chances, bitch, this ain't Jeopardy. The hug on my back, cause they know I got the recipe.
Man, poker's
What's
a
up,
math
guys?
game.
Pillar Talk, episode 157, Coach.
Yep, 157.
157. Today we have Greg Raymer. What's his nickname?
Fossilman.
Fossilman.
Yep.
So tell us about a little bit about him, Coach, and then we'll have him talk about himself.
So I just we were just talking to Greg before the show for just a hot second, but I grew up watching the World Series of Poker with my grandfather. And Greg was one of the most iconic people faces of that whole, like, that was rising at the time so big. Like ESPN was airing it, people were watching it, people were talking about it. The handheld games were coming out, like the little World Series of Poker, they were coming out on Xbox.
What,
like
2004, 5,
Yep,
6?
it was right around 2004. I think Greg won it. I think the year was 2004. Am I correct there, Greg?
Yep.
Hey, I'm going to tell you right now, that's a complete guess based off my own recollection of ESPN
Yeah.
starting the
So do you remember when all that stuff was rising though?
Yeah.
And Greg was the face, in my opinion, was the face of the World Series of Poker during that rise. Everybody knew the Fossilman, right? And so to have this conversation, it's incredible. Now, from what I understand, he's still involved in it today. We're going to ask him about that. But again, this is somebody who won on the highest level, man. And I think that's incredible.
Champion.
So Greg, we appreciate you coming on. If you want to tell us a little bit and add on to that, feel free.
Well, let's go into it. Let's find out exactly who you are. Start from as early as you want to start, and let's hear about your story.
Well, it was a warm day in Minot, North Dakota when I was born. I don't know what the weather was. It was June, so it was probably warm. No. So I'm someone who's always been very math oriented, and that's a very big plus for being a good poker player. That's why I was teasing you, Josh, when you did 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and the countdown failed. And I was like, wait, you can't count from 5 to 1. Like, that might be a problem for your poker game.
Yeah.
But, being math oriented is helpful, but poker is like anything else. Anyone can become a very, very good poker player. So if you have great kind of natural intuitive math skills, it'll maybe come easier to you. And the other big aspect of being a winning live poker player as opposed to online is, reading your opponent, having that sense of when they're strong or when they're bluffing. And some people are just naturally better at that than others. So again, you might, reach a certain level quicker if you have those natural talents. But even if you don't have any of those natural talents in either area, if you put in the time, the effort, the study, the training, you can become a winning poker player. Now, whether you're going to ever have a shot at being world class, that's different. So it's kind of like, think of some kid who likes to play basketball. He might work really, really hard, and they are obviously going to become way above average. They're going to be better than 99+% of all the people out there. But if they don't also have some natural talents for that game, they're not going to make it to the NBA. Right. They're not going to go that far. I mean, the easy thing with basketball is just like, oh, wait, your full grown height is 5'8". You're not going to make it in the NBA. Like maybe one guy in history or something has gotten into the
couple. There's been a couple, but you're right. Yeah, for the most part, statistically.
And those guys have physical talents in other areas that are like off the charts,
right.
1 in a billion, level of extremes.
Wasn't Muggsy 5'3"?
Yeah, Muggsy was super short.
Something like that.
But he's right. Yeah, you're right.
But he had
speed. Yeah, and he had handles.
Yeah, so I mean, they have other amazing physical talents that had to be way, way, way beyond anyone. I'm sure there was no one else in the NBA that was better than him at certain other physical skills, the coordination, the speed, and so on. So Yeah, and that would be true of like if you wanted to become, if you wanted to get into chess. If you have the right mindset for that game, it will come easier, quicker, more naturally to you. But anyone who really devotes themselves is going to become an exceptionally good player. They just might not make it as a grandmaster, that extra super elite level. Of course, poker, there's a huge luck factor. So now you don't have to become, the top 1% of 1% of 1% like you would be for the NBA. Those guys literally are that. They're the 1 in a million of all the people who are putting in the effort to make it.
Best of the best, sir.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, because there's no real luck factor in that game. But since there is a luck factor in poker, we've had plenty of players who have gone very, very deep, made final tables, at the World Series of Poker, who really aren't that good.
But because the cards fell right.
Right. Yep.
But the thing is, if you're twice as good as I am at poker, then you need, half as much luck, so to speak, to win that tournament this year. And so that's really, a good analogy has always been, if you're one of the best players, it's like you have more tickets in the lottery. So a horrible player has like one ticket out of, 50 million tickets in that lottery. And the very best players have, 500,000 tickets. So they're much more likely to have their ticket pulled and win the whole thing.
That makes sense. Out of curiosity, what did you do? What did you do before poker?
So I was a full-time patent attorney. And so I went to undergrad. I got a degree in chemistry. I went to graduate school, got a master's degree in biochemistry, specializing in biotech. And then I went to law school. So I didn't get out of school till I was 28. And I was a full-time patent attorney for about 12 years.
Pretty sure. I think Einstein was something like that. Maybe not a patent attorney, but he signed.
He was a patent clerk in Switzerland for some period of time. So he was doing paperwork and stuff. But, I certainly am not comparing myself to him in any way.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, I didn't know that.
But, I enjoy science. It's a great job, great career, like the pay's good. And, you as like the scientist, as the engineer, as the chemist, whatever, you're out there doing all the hard work in the lab, figuring this out and inventing it. And then you come to me and I get to talk to you and learn all about this cool new technology you've invented and then help you get a patent on it. So by definition, if you're talking to me for more than a brief period of time where I would say, nope, like that's old. We already know about that. You're wasting your time with me. Other than that kind of client who might come to your door, everyone else has something brand new. And so that's, interesting and cool.
Yeah, so you just saw all kinds of cool stuff then, to be honest. So how does that's like so different? How does then at what point are you going from, this scientific driven person to the kind of poker side? Like when did that shift or how did that all happen?
It was just happening at the same time. People have hobbies, of course. Very few people, have to work every waking hour to make ends meet or anything. So most people have some sort of hobby. So, one guy goes bowling, another guy goes golfing, another guy goes fishing or whatever. I was playing poker on the side. So that was my main hobby. I was very serious about it. I spent at least as much time like studying, reading poker books and, debating with people on online, chat forums and stuff that are focused on poker. And so I was always trying to learn more and improve and get better. And I kept getting better. And then in 2004, I had an especially good week. And now I'm being offered more money to represent this online poker site than I'm getting paid to be a lawyer. Wow. So, I never, ever suggest to someone, and I've been asked about this a lot in 20 years, I'm thinking of quitting my job or dropping out of school, just becoming a full-time poker pro. And I always tell them, don't do it. But in my case, it's like I've just won a bunch of money and I'm being offered this other job that pays a lot more. And oh, what's the job? Travel around the world, represent them while playing poker.
Yeah.
So, that's very, very different than, you have a job, you're a mechanic for a big company and you service their vehicles and you get paid 100,000 a year and you have, health insurance and all this stuff for your family. And you're saying, I'm going to quit that job and just play poker. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Most poker pros don't make 100,000 a year, especially now that's 130, 40,000 of value with all your benefits. I'm never going to suggest you quit that job. Like, if
right,
you don't
you
think
better hope you win it.
They're not winning. And I mean, if you're winning, being a champion, how much did you win when you won the World Series of Poker?
Well, the prize money that year was $5 million.
And then,
and I don't get all of that. I actually had people who owned a piece of my bankroll for the entire year. And so I sent them over $2 million. And then, of course, I paid taxes on what was left. But I'm still at that point, even after taxes, I'm getting, 10, 15 years of my income at my current job. Right. And I'm getting, like I said, I'm getting offered even more money per year to be the poker pro who travels around and represents this online poker site. So that's very, very different than you quitting your job and just expecting, like, I'm going to be able to win this much while playing. The truth is, most of the people who ask me probably aren't good enough to make a living at poker.
Right. Yep.
I mean, it's generally impossible for me to judge that because in many cases I've never seen them play, or I've played with them at this table today for a few hours and now they're asking me. So I don't have enough information to know where their skill level is at, how good they are.
But I think your message was important too, though, of like, you also busted your ass both at your job and at the poker table. Like, that's another portion of guys that think they want to quit their job and do that also are eliminated, from being that they're going to eliminate their chance of success just because they weren't willing to work. Like, you doubled up, right? And I think that's the key message.
And that's
I don't know that that's it. I would just say, like, for me, it was this very, very serious hobby. And that's possible in poker. Whereas, that might be more difficult in other endeavors. But even if you talk to people who, let's say, make it on the PGA Tour as golfers, some of them are like, okay, I've gotten out of college. I tried, but didn't get on the tour. I still need to improve a bit. And so they're getting full-time jobs as, like, pros at a golf course, something like that. So they're making a living in the golf world, and they're still working hard on their game in their extra time. Yep. And they're playing some of those, the Hooters tour and stuff like that.
You think people, when you start a business, people assume, oh, these, they don't realize you should probably keep your day job also for a little bit if you can.
Well, I mean, I like to watch Shark Tank with my wife, and some of those people have already quit their real job and to focus on this thing that they're pitching. Many of them have not. They're like, no, like, we still have a job. And you may have heard the sharks, like, oh, well, I'll quit my job. And they're like, I don't want you to quit your job. Like, you told us you got 3 kids. Like, you need the health insurance, and you need to, like, be able to pay the mortgage so you don't get kicked out of the house. And, there is this fine line between giving everything to pursue your dream and being realistic.
I definitely agree.
So I'd like to almost go into like a mind state thing. I want to know your mind state in the tournament. I want to know your mind state leading up to the final table, and then leading up to the final 2 or 3 of you. What is going through your mind? What is going through your, like, the emotions, your feelings?
The funny thing about poker is a lot of the best players, it is a very unemotional thing. the people who are very emotional as they play, that often leads them to playing not so well, because the emotions are now guiding a decision, and that guidance may be contrary to what math and logic tells you you should do. So poker is at its core a math game. It is all about math. It is all about which of these decisions is on average going to give me the most chips, which also means in many cases folding, so you lose less chips.
Yep.
And the psychology part of the game is just reading you. So like there's a very hot trend in poker for a few years about players pursuing what they call GTO strategy, game theory optimal strategy. And people have been programming computers, and especially, with AI and stuff. And it's like, let's have this computer who can teach itself to play a better and better poker strategy. And there are computers out there now who can effectively outplay the best humans at poker. But the thing about those programs is they don't take into account that Josh just stroked his beard, and he does that when he's uncertain, or whatever pattern I might have noticed playing against you all day long. And so I see that, and now I become more sure you're bluffing. I take that into account, making the decision on what I should do next. The computer can't do that.
So my question real quick is, okay, so how many beard strokes does it take for you to pick that up?
It's a question of when you do it, and I have to see the cards. So I see you stroking your beard more during one hand. And then if I get to see your cards, because you get to showdown, and now I'll be like, okay, he was bluffing on that hand, but then after the river card, he made this miracle backdoor straight draw that was highly unlikely. And then maybe he wasn't stroking the beard as much anymore after the dealer put that final card out. Now I think stroking your beard is something you'll probably be more likely to do when you're bluffing.
Damn, and you're really watching all those little intricate details
on everyone.
You try. I mean, right. I'm sure I miss a lot more than I see, but I do try to pay attention to all these little things, and that's another important part. If you go to a poker room anywhere in the country right now, whether it's a cash game or a tournament, most players, after they fold their hand, which you fold most of your hands in the early part of each hand, and then they are on their phones doing stuff. They are watching there's always TVs in a poker room showing you the current, football games, baseball, whatever, stuff like that going on. And they're not usually paying attention to what's happening at their table anymore because they're not directly part of it. But it is that period of time where you aren't part of it and there is no emotional involvement anymore. When I'm in a hand against you, I care about the outcome, and that could lead me to taking some emotional, aspects of it. Like, I want to win this hand, so now I convince myself that you're bluffing, even if that really isn't the sensible conclusion I should be drawing right now, because that's the way I would win this pot, is if you're bluffing. So that desire to win might overcome logic. But if I'm not in the hand because I folded and I'm watching you guys play a hand against each other, well, I don't necessarily care which of you wins. So there is no emotional investment. Now I can be much more, detached about interpreting what your, physical mannerisms might be telling me. So you got to pay attention when you're not in the hand. You got to pay attention when you're in the hand. You got to pay attention to all the specific facts like a computer would, like how many chips does each player have? Because there's a big difference in how I'm going to play this pot. We've got $1,000 in the middle of the table right now, and you only have $1,000 left in front of you. I'm going to probably play the hand very differently than if you and I each had $10,000 left for future rounds of betting.
Your blood pressure is through the roof this entire game, I feel like. Anybody who plays poker.
Actually, I don't think it is.
You don't think so?
Well, that's kind of why
I did a show years ago, and that was broadcast live in England. And they didn't have a blood pressure monitor, but they did have a pulse monitor to measure your heart rate.
Right.
And so they had a couple of those, and they were doing these like 6-handed sit and goes, we would call them. 6 people start the game. It's a fairly quick structure. In about 2 hours, someone's going to win the whole thing, win all the chips. And you had to win and finish first at your table to advance and make any money. And they had a couple of these monitors that they put on a couple two of the 6. And I had been watching the show the night before I was going to play. And it was in England. There was like poker pros at the tables, but also some like celebrities that were invited to play. So I didn't know this guy, but he's some British celebrity. I mean, his heart rate was sky high. They were making jokes, but half serious about we needed to have like like EMTs on standby here. Like this guy's going to pop. I mean, his pulse rate was getting like 150 and higher. Like it was crazy. And I was thinking, my pulse rate, but they put one on me, and I asked my friends later, because I obviously didn't watch the show live since I was doing it. And they were like, no, like there was a hand where you flopped a full house and your heart rate went from like 59 to 60. like that was it.
You always seemed, and just actually listening to this conversation, the first part of this, you seem very, very like under control, calm in the moment, like just the ability to keep your mentality in check during the, I coach football, so to speak, during the game, you know what I'm saying? Stay mentally. Yeah. So like to kind of go off of Josh's, I imagine that in that moment when you're gonna, about to win the World Series of Poker, you're just locked in, just ready to just play the next hand, finish the job.
And that is what poker is all about. It's play each hand as perfectly as you can, make the smartest decision you can every time it's your turn, and then move on and play the next hand the best you can. And that's it. It's not this like, okay, I'm going to do this. And you can't like plan in advance how it's going to go today and then try to make it happen. That's a huge losing strategy, to try to like, okay, I'm in this tournament and I'm going to double my chips by the end of level 3. It's like, no, you might get dealt a bunch of crappy cards, and the correct play is to just fold. But now you're trying to force it. It won't come. You'll just be.
That's crazy too, because sports actually work like the opposite, right? Like sports, you can play and you're like, I know what this guy or this gal is going to do. I know that they like dribbling with their right hand. I know that they can't block this run play. Like you can kind of plan and get an idea. You can plan and get an idea. And like poker's so, because of that luck factor that's involved, it's so like you have to be on your game, but it's so unpredictable, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if I have a chance, I can do research on opponent, and maybe, like you said, the guy likes to dribble with his right hand. Well, I might know that this guy or that guy either likes to bluff a lot and will probably do it more than he theoretically should, or maybe they are always timid about bluffing and very rarely bluff. So I would take that into account, and I will maybe make a different decision than the GTO computer would. The perfect example for that is, like I said, GTO does not take into account who I'm playing against. So it's going to play the hand the same way against me, Josh, Coach, Phil Hellmuth, Chris Moneymaker, or, Sam Walton, whatever, any person in the world. It doesn't care who you are. And if you had 200 big blinds, so like if we were playing a cash game and the blinds were $1 and $2, and you had like $400 or more, if you just went all in on the first round of betting, the computer is going to fold unless it has 2 aces. Because it's like, okay, I've got $2 out there. I'm not going to call 398 more unless I have 2 aces.
Right.
And if you went all in on the next hand and the third hand, and the 20th hand, every single hand, the computer would still say like, I have this many big blinds. I only call with 2 aces. But in the real world, even someone who isn't very good at poker would quickly realize that like this person is just going all in every hand, no matter what they have. And it's not smart for me to wait for two aces. I should be calling when I have two kings and two queens and two jacks and ace king and probably more. So, you and I would adjust and we would try to take advantage of what we've learned about this opponent. And so that is poker really in a nutshell. You want this GTO strategy in your head. Like, this is my basic strategy. This is what I do the first hand I play against Josh and Coach, because I don't know anything about them or how they play. But as I learn how they play, as I maybe pick up some tells, I'm going to start changing from that strategy and do things that are more effective at taking advantage of whatever I think I've learned about you.
Makes sense. Let's keep going on this path for a minute, if you don't mind. And so Greg, the listeners, everybody knows the Fossilman nickname. So where did that come from?
Quite simply, early in my poker career, I'm working in San Diego County, and I would often go play poker at this club called the Oceanside Card Club. And earlier that day on a Saturday, my wife wanted to go to this gem and mineral show because she wanted to look at some things. So we went. And while I was there, one of the vendors his table had fossils for sale. And he had these fossils that were fairly inexpensive that, were like perfect card protectors. Like often when you're playing poker, you want to have something to put on top of your cards, because that's a signal to the dealer, I am not folding, don't take these cards. And so I thought, well, this fossil is cool. I like it. It's not that much. It'll make a perfect card protector. I bought it, took it to the poker room that night. People started asking me about it. And when I mentioned it was 330 million years old, some of them were like, wow, that must be worth a fortune. And so I went back and I bought more of those fossils and started selling them. And I'd usually sell them for like 5 times what they cost me. And so I always had a bunch of different fossils on the table when I would play back then. And so then I picked up the nickname Fossilman.
I love it, man. I remember that growing up big time. That was one of my favorite things about, especially when you're a kid, you're just like, Fossilman, that's so cool. You're just like, that is the coolest freaking nickname, man. And then, so like I said before the show, I knew that growing up, but just for people listening, I always think that's super awesome. So Greg, I kind of want to ask this before I forget, and tell me if this is correct or not correct. And I kind of want to hear the story behind this, because this sounds absolutely insane. So this reports that there's a little bit of negative stuff that comes with poker, right? Or gambling in general on Wikipedia. So, you can discredit this, It says on December 20th, 2004, 2 men attempted to rob Raymer at gunpoint as he returned to his hotel room after playing in a cash game, and he held them off by using a karate chop until the police arrived. Like, I kind of just have to know about this karate chop. If this was a story.
There was no, I don't know where the heck the karate chop came from.
Okay, so somebody on Wikipedia is a clown.
Someone, they pulled that one out of where. Now 2 guys did try to mug me, and I was holding them off, and yelling for help. And then one of them pulled out a gun, and I stopped yelling for not very long. I'm sure it was probably only a few seconds. But again, that's where like maybe the poker stuff kicked in. It was like these guys have been trying to push me into my hotel room. Like they jumped me just as I had unlocked the door to the hotel room, and they were trying to push me in.
Won, right? This was after
this is many months afterwards.
Yep.
And so they clearly were targeting me specifically.
Right.
And they're trying to push me in, and I'm a pretty big guy and pretty strong. I pushed us back out, kind of knocked them away from me. And so I'm basically standing there facing the end of the hall, but they're in front of me with their backs to the end of the hallway. And the smaller of the 2 pulls this gun out of this bag he was been carrying. And I stopped yelling for just a second or 2. But what raced through my mind is they are trying to get me in my room, which means they're probably planning on tying me up to rob me. And I've now seen their faces. So if they get me all tied up in there, they might decide we need to kill this guy because he can identify us. And if I'm all tied up in my room and they decide to kill me, I'm basically 99% dead. Whereas if I keep fighting them in the hallway out here, even if they shoot me, there's a much better chance I won't die. So after that thought flashed through my mind really fast, I started yelling for help again. The bigger guy tried to grab me again, and I knocked him to the ground and immediately thought that was a mistake. I shouldn't have knocked him down. I should have like grabbed onto him and like tried to, like grab around his arms if I could so he couldn't punch and stuff, but just hold on to him because then maybe the other guy doesn't want to shoot his partner. And I'm thinking I'm about to get shot. And I look up like just a little to the left, where the little guy had been with the gun, thinking I'm going to see him pointing that gun at me. And instead, he's not there. And like I can see the whole end of the hallway. He's not anywhere. And I like look around and turn my head and he's running up the hallway. And then the big guy got to his feet and he ran down the hallway after him. And there was security guards running up the hallway towards us, so these guys were now seen by multiple people, and the cameras had them in the elevator lobby, in the elevator, downstairs, through the casino, to the parking garage, their license plate number as they were exiting the garage. But the police didn't show up till after those guys were long gone. Like they'd been gone for at least a minute or two before the police got there.
It's silly. There's cameras everywhere.
There's no cameras in the hallways.
The Bellagio, that's correct, right? It was there.
It was at the Bellagio, but there's no cameras in the hallway.
Okay.
You're not on camera again until you are back in the elevator lobby.
Even now?
As far as I know, at the time, the guy who was head of security was talking to me, later that evening. This happened at like 3 a.m. And he's talking to me later. I'm sure they, got him out of bed and said, oh my God, this just happened. You got to get down here. But, he mentioned like they don't have weapons. Like none of the security people have guns. At least, they don't have guns. They have, billy clubs or something maybe, or tasers. I don't know, but they don't have guns. And he said, we're not allowed to have cameras in the hallway. I suspect, having my legal background, that the casinos probably lobbied the gaming commission to say, tell us we're not allowed to have them in the hallway because we don't want the cost and expense of putting them in the hallway. And if you tell us we're not allowed to have them, then no one could ever sue us and say we were negligent for not having adequate security in the hallways.
And that's so wrong, though, because you should have cameras at every casino in every corner.
Because when you go to the casino, you literally, as the moment you walk on that floor, you're seen at every single angle.
Yeah, but these guys are going to tie me up. And even if they hadn't been thinking we're going to kill him, now how are you going to figure out when they're going to like maybe stay in there for hours?
Right.
And stuff. And it's like now you have, dozens of hours of footage to try to, and you only have the elevator lobbies to try to say who could have done this. You're going to have, hundreds of suspects at that point. So they think they're going to get away with it.
The Holiday Inn's has cameras in them freaking hallways.
I mean, at least in 2004, if this guy was telling me the truth, then there was not a single casino hotel in Las Vegas that had cameras in the hallways.
It's wild. I never knew that. That's something I just assumed that they were just security all over the place.
Did you, after winning the World Series of Poker and everything, and just being with your reputation and playing this game, and have you found other challenges kind of throughout, whether it be just people, because you always hear, right, when somebody wins the lottery, people ask them for money, or do you deal with a lot of that on a daily basis over the years?
No, I really thought I would. I expected it. Especially after that was on TV. So It didn't air on TV till several months later, but
see how many high school buddies came back around after that.
Yeah, and I really hardly had any of that at all. I think especially people who maybe knew me a little bit from playing with me before in the poker world, are kind of like, I'm not even going to waste my time. Like I don't, Greg's going to say no, because I've always been someone who's like, yeah, I don't borrow, I don't lend. If I want to
respect
borrow
that.
money, it's like you're a bank and I'm mortgaging my house. That's when I'm borrowing money, and you're charging me interest, and if I don't pay you back, you're going to foreclose and blah blah blah. It's all upfront and legal. But if I hand some cash to a poker friend, no matter what they say, that doesn't mean I'm really going to ever be able to get it back if they don't want to pay me.
Yep.
Or can't. So, I mean, it's a good rule of thumb too. Any friend, any family member, no matter how much they are in need, you don't ever lend them money. You might give it to them.
Right.
And they might say they're going to pay you back. But in your mind, you should be thinking like, here's my pal coach. He needs $10,000 to fix his car. He's a good enough friend, a close enough friend. I'm going to give this to him. And he'll say, I'm paying you back. And I'll say, okay, whatever, But in my mind, it's a gift. And if he doesn't pay me back, I'm not going to be mad at him because I gifted it to him. If he does pay me back, fantastic. But if they're not important enough to you that you wouldn't give it to them, don't lend it to them.
The problem is too, when you start lending stuff to people, it becomes an expectation. So like you lend it to them once and it's like, oh, thank you. But then then the second time comes around and they're like, well, you looked out for me once before. And then the third time it becomes more of a like, what, hey, where's my cut? That's kind of, it's weird, but that's kind of how the human mind works. If you lend things to people and you kind of just give away stuff, they expect it and they'll keep coming back. So you have to be really careful about, like you said, like who you do that with and that sort of thing.
I'm curious real quick. So I'm all about traveling and food, and I'm not going to go the food route this time, but where are some cool or some of your favorite places that poker has taken you?
Well, I've been over a big chunk of the world at this point. When I, for 6 years, I was representing this major online poker site who sponsors poker tournaments all around the world. So they required me to go to many different places in Europe and places in South America and Australia and New Zealand and Korea. And they had a big event. They used to have a big event every January in the Bahamas, and it's like, well, you have to come and we'll pay for it, but we'll also pay for your family to come. So it's like telling my wife and daughter, like, oh no, we have to go to the Bahamas in January. And they're like, oh no, Daddy, not again. I have to swim with the dolphins again. So, it's taken me all over the place. But now that I don't, it's not part of this representation deal to go to those overseas events, I don't do it because economically it really doesn't make much sense.
Right.
Even if there's a better tournament, in Paris than some tournament I might be able to play at the same time in the US, it's probably not better enough that I will make more money over there than the extra cost of the travel, and like just food and hotel and stuff overseas tends to be a lot more expensive. So almost all my travel now is within the US.
And I know you have some Michigan history. We talked about it. Do you ever make your way back here to the Mitten State?
I have been back, not too recently, but I have several Michigan shirts because my daughter is a graduate.
Go Blue, shout out.
Yeah, go Blue. So I have the Michigan Dad shirt, and there's another Michigan one that's like a Star Wars theme, like the Empire Strikes Back is what it says. I love it. So I have several of those from her, and my wife grew up in Saline. And all of my family on my dad's side lives, is basically in Michigan and northern Indiana. My wife's family is all through Michigan. I don't get back there a lot, but I'm always happy to be back.
When you come back around, make sure you reach out to the BrainJerk guys, and we'll come have lunch with you, or buy you lunch or something, and get together.
Yeah, we're about 40 minutes from Saline, right?
Yep. We're not far from Saline at all. Not
Well, I could say, they're like Firekeepers has some big poker tournaments, and we got 3 big poker rooms in Detroit. Gun Lake has a poker room, and then there's some smaller poker rooms around the state. So there's no telling. It's I tend to go where I can book one of my seminars. So I do these full-day poker seminars that are generally going to be hosted by a poker room, a casino somewhere.
Yep.
So whoever I can convince to host one of my events, will drive my travel decisions, and then places that are willing to comp me stuff. So it's like, oh, you're having a good tournament series, and you will give me the free hotel room, and maybe you'll even pay a buy-in because you want me to be there, and I will go on my social media and talk about, hey, come join me at XYZ Casino for their tournament this weekend.
Dude, that's awesome.
That's cool.
That is super cool. I love that, and I love that you're still involved and doing stuff, man. That's so awesome. One day, man, when you come back, we'll meet up for a game or lunch or something. I wanted to talk about this before we get out of here today. I wanted to make sure I asked about this. As I get older, I find myself getting into politics more and more, and just more policies than politics, I would say. But I once heard that you were going to run for vice president potentially. Is that true? And what kind of made you decide not to run?
Well, I vaguely floated the idea of running for the Libertarian Party. Okay. Unfortunately, I would say the current Libertarian Party does not align as well with my political values as it did back then, which would have been I understand 17, 18 years ago. But basically, I think both of our major political parties are just horrible. Now,
we can agree.
One of them has become one of them has stayed as horrible as ever. The other has gotten tremendously worse.
Agree.
And I'm happy to tell you which of those I think that is, or not. I don't care.
I honestly agree with you, and I know which ones you're talking about.
So the thought back then wasn't so much that I'm going to win and become vice president. I knew that was never going to happen ever. But the thought was, let's get more votes for third party candidates. And let's say you feel like I do. You don't like either of the major parties. And then here's what you should be doing. If you're voting in an election and the winner is already pretty much guaranteed because of where you live, or at least, when we had the last presidential election, there was no one who could say with 100% certainty before it happened who was going to win. We know what polls said, and you could have your level of belief or disbelief in those poll numbers. But put it like this, if you lived in California, Biden was winning all of those electoral college votes.
Yeah, no matter what.
And if you lived in Texas, Trump was going to win all of those electoral votes, no matter how you voted. So when you live in one of these red or blue states, if you prefer the ideals of some third party, vote for that party, because you are not going to influence the actual outcome. Yep. So even if you and a bunch of other people do the same thing and vote for, whether it's the Libertarians or the Green Party or whatever else, but if that third party gets more votes, then they'll get more notice, more attention, and maybe they can become the next new big party at some point. Now, if you are in a swing state, I strongly recommend you don't vote for any Republican in any race whatsoever. because they're the horrible party and we don't want them to win. But if it's like, hey, I know who's going to win this election, well, even if it's the local thing, if you think it could matter, then vote for the lesser of two evils, so to speak, because you might as well have the lesser of two evils win this election. But if you know, like in your district for state representative, that one party, like the one candidate is a lock, then vote for the candidate that you believe in the most, and especially if it's a third party candidate.
Yeah, I think the byproduct of all that too is like get comfortable with voting outside of the two parties. Like, screw it. Let's just try to get more people comfortable, because what we really need, we can argue all day long. Like, somebody, I shake hands with people all day that think, the current president's better. I may think there's a better option, whatnot. But what I do think most of us agree on is that the two party system can like kind of go to hell and be done.
Well, and it doesn't help that how many percentage of the people actually do vote? Was it like 40% of America actually votes?
Well, when people complain about things, part of the problem is that we are, as a group, massively pathetic. We're horrible voters. Like you said, not many vote, even when it's the big national election. And then how many of them put any real effort into determining who should get their vote?
Maybe 3%.
I mean, I feel like I probably put 10 times as much into it as the average American. And then I also feel like I probably put in about 10% of what I should.
Yeah.
We rank 31st in the world in voter turnout.
Which is what?
I just read the headline because I didn't want to keep being on my phone, but the headline literally just said that the U.S. ranks 31st in the world in voter turnout, which means you can't be doing that well.
No, when you complain, though, when people, I see it all the time, people complain about, oh, the government sucks, the politicians suck, there's nothing we can do, or they're like, oh, we should have term limits. And I'm like, don't vote for the person who's already served a couple times. Like, you don't have to vote for them, even if there's no law that limits them and prevents them from running again. Just say, I will never vote for someone who's already served once or twice.
That was pewresearch.org. I don't know how much value they have, but
I see what you're saying. That, but my thing, here's my concept on term limits is all this stuff that we go by now. It was all set up for a time when people lived until they were 35, 45, 50. People are living way longer now. And
I think it's our
job way longer than they were before. And I
don't think that's the political issue, though.
Don't want that person in, don't vote for them. But at the same time, like when somebody sees somebody running unopposed, they just 9 times out of 10, they just color in that because there's nothing else to color, when really all they have to do is write someone else in. It could be your neighbor. You could write some people in.
But you're right. The comment.
Also, think about the entertainment options for you in 1790, 1800.
The presidential race.
There's no television. There's no movies. There are limited numbers of magazines, newspapers, and stuff like that.
It was in poker.
And so people were more involved at every level. At the national level, they were reading the information that they could get through things like newspapers. And at the local level, they knew who these people were who were running for office in their area. And that was like part of your entertainment would be like, I'm going to go to the political rally, not just I'm going to go to the Biden or the Trump rally because that's my guy.
Right.
I'm going to the rally of everyone because what else am I going to do tonight? And I'll learn about them more. And maybe I'll decide I want to support them, or maybe I'll decide I want to work really hard to make sure they don't win. But people were more involved because that was kind of part of your entertainment, not just your civic duty. Now we have things that are much, much, much more fun than any of that. And people
why would you go vote if you can go do something fun?
Well,
Right.
plus
That's
Well,
how
it's not even just vote, but just you're not going to take the time to learn about these people.
right.
well,
I
not
mean,
only that, but it's like, okay, so what is the point of me doing that if I know for a fact these dudes are lying to me every step of the way?
well, but if we were all more involved, you could get rid of the shithole candidates
Very
at
That's
the
a good,
at the local level
right.
before they moved up to the more important offices. So
Yep.
you'd have someone running for city council, and you're involved, and you find out what a piece of crap they are and how horrible their views are and the stuff they're going to vote for, at least from your point of view. And now you're working to get them out and make sure they don't dig their way deeper into your party, whichever one it is.
Or they're the governor.
And now they're the governor now, the senator for the the US senator and stuff like that, where they have that all that power. We have to get rid of them very, very early in the process, but that requires massive involvement from all of us, which at this point in time, it's really hard to foresee how that's ever going to happen.
Man, Greg, that's scary to think, but I was just going to say that I don't know how that happens, because you're right. There's just so much temptation and so much. It's so much more fun for people nowadays to get involved in something that's just more lighthearted, more fun. Why would I go get involved in? Plus, politics has such a stink about it now, right? Like,
Oh, it
even
does.
people like look at me funny. They're like, you pay attention to policies and politics, and I'm like, well, yeah, bro, because like my money and my future and shit depend on all this. So like, yes, I pay attention to what policies are being passed and who's in office and what's going on.
That's literally what's running everything around us.
Right. I learned it during COVID to pay attention.
To both of your guys' points, we should be paying more attention than we are.
A lot more.
Us do.
Yep.
Like I said, I'm outperforming the average American by a mile, and I'm underperforming the ideal American by a mile.
Which is crazy to think about. It's, patriot, just having I don't care what side you're on, man, because I've asked this question before to people who are like, I'm a diehard Republican or a diehard Democrat. I'm like, so you agree with every single thing, all 1,000 policies that they lay out? You agree? No, there's probably a whole bunch of those in there that you don't agree with. So in reality, most of you are not, if not all of you are not actually, you've just become so brainwashed into like almost like sports where you have to cheer for your team, where it's not even like, I don't even care, I just got to root for my team, right? Instead of
it's tribalism. It's built into our DNA to be tribal.
Yeah,
people like to be part of a group. I mean, it's kind of like the joke about like teenagers, how they say they want to be individual and unique, but what they're really saying is, I want to be part of my tribe of the other kids in high school who are different than our parents, but I don't want to be different from them. So it's like, that's why I want to wear the special earrings and get tattoos in places where my parents are like, hell no, because I want, if my tribe is doing that stuff, I want to do it. And mom and dad aren't my tribe.
Is done, right? That's why like kids form bands in their garage. That's why, and even negative things, like I was just telling Josh, like that's sadly why like cults get formed. That's why like because people,
that's why they join the cult.
AA meetings, right? Like you want to be around other people that quit drinking alcohol, so you go to an AA meeting where you're accepted by other like-minded people, right? That's your tribe, right? So no, you're right. By human nature, I just listened to a podcast the other day that talked about this in like deep depth.
By other podcasts, he means Joe Rogan.
It probably was Joe Rogan.
I remember.
But he talked about that in deep depth about how people are so adamant for like status and to be a part of something.
That's part of why people get into these various conspiracy theories. It's like, even if I didn't really believe in flat Earth, if I say I do, I can be part of the group and everyone accepts me.
Right. Some of those get dangerous.
Honest, that's one of those that if I sit and listen to the flat earther talk for a little while, I start to think maybe.
See, I don't jump on that
I'm
one.
Like all over like the science that I know that I've been taught my whole life, but it's just there's they have a point to some of this stuff. To some, I'm not like fully educated. I'm not an astronaut. I haven't seen it.
But
you know
again,
what I
you
mean?
have to
But
ask yourself too, is some of that because I want to be a part of that group?
No, I want to be a part of the round earthers. But before the round earthers, they believe that the earth was flat. And then there's all these other things like penguins. Let's talk about penguins.
I just feel like
real quick.
The pictures of the earth.
I know it has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, but penguins. Okay, so there's penguins in Antarctica, right? There's also penguins in Chile. There's also penguins in Australia.
Yeah.
And there's also penguins in South Africa. If you do around Earth, there's no reason any penguins should be in any of those places. They can't go that far. But as soon as you flatten that Earth, those are the 3 closest points to the wall.
That is kind of, but that starts.
They're also the closest points to the shore of Antarctica.
Antarctica's a weird place,
it's
man.
Antarctica.
Is the weirdest.
Chile isn't further away from Antarctica in a round Earth map versus a flat Earth map.
See, I would have to.
well, the thing that I was watching, and obviously this is the internet. You never know. I'm not, like I said,
I've been wrong before. Joe says that all the time.
But it was like these god awful. Like, in order to do it on a round map, that there was like, I don't know, we'll just throw some numbers out there. It was like 600 miles, 900 miles, and then 1,600 miles. And there's no way that these penguins, maybe the smaller one they could have got to, the 600-mile one, but the other ones, like 1,500 miles, there's no reason a penguin should be that far away from Antarctica, is basically.
But those species of penguins don't live in Antarctica anymore.
That's the other thing too.
The ones that are in Chile just live in Chile. They don't go back and forth. So the ones in South Africa don't go back and forth. So at some point, I don't know, but at some point,
that's almost like the invasive species shit.
How did a fox get from North America to Europe?
Yep.
There's a lot of those crazy ones.
Somewhere in the past, it got across, whether that was back in the last ice age, 14,000 years ago, whatever. I forget if that's the exact number, but, whether it had used land bridges at that point in time.
Right.
But I guarantee you, if we go find the right expert, they can explain it to you exactly how we believe it happened that this species got here or there or whatever.
But so can the flat Earth guy.
The flat Earth guy's pulling it out of his ass.
Right. There is
as opposed to using like
science,
archaeological evidence, fossil evidence.
There is. I do think there is a little bit to certain conspiracies, obviously. Like, I don't think everything's a conspiracy. But there is some that are like, and you got to be careful with that today because of the internet. Like, so I'm a college football fan, right? They dropped the trailer for the new college football game that's supposed to come out 10 years later. Long story short, there was people that were like circling numbers on the little like next movie sign that were like, they gave us the date. And I'm like, they did not give you the damn date. Stop it.
Yeah.
I'm like, we got to quit with everything is not, but there are definitely some interesting, there's some interesting topics and conversations out there for sure.
I like talking.
If you start looking at numbers, your life is over in terms of like finding connections between things. Like what you said, this was episode number 157. 7 + 5 + 1 is 13. Hey, there's 13 cards in each suit. Oh my God! Of course, Greg's on this episode.
Of course he is.
You know what? You just gave me a question though, and we're getting close on time here. But I want Greg. Did you have any like superstitions or anything you did for luck or anything like that during your time playing?
No, not at all.
He showed up and said, I'm here to win this shit.
I'm gonna be honest, that doesn't surprise me.
No, and like I've been asked by reporters, like, okay, when did you know you were gonna win? Because they'll ask a question like that of people who have won other big poker tournaments, and the guy will be like, oh, when I knocked this guy out and there was only 5 of us left, that's when I felt like, yes, this is mine, I'm going to do it. When they ask me the question, Greg, when did you know you were going to win? I'm like, when David turned over his cards on the final hand and I had him beat.
Yeah.
I said, up until that point, I didn't think I was going to win. I thought I had this percent chance. So there's like, 2,500 entries. I'm a lot better than average. I probably have one chance in 1,000 before we've dealt the cards. And now I have 10% of the chips. And again, I think I'm better than the average player left. Now I have 15% chance of winning it all. David and I get heads up. I have 70% of the chips. I'm like, I probably have 75 to 80% chance of winning. But not until I see his cards am I like, yes, I'm going to win. If he had beaten me on that hand, it would not have shocked me. And
Do you
I
still
would have
talk
been
to him?
like, yeah, I mean, we've always been friendly. He lives in Vegas. I live in North Carolina. I see him when we run into each other, like when I go to Vegas for the summer during the whole World Series of Poker. I go there every summer for about 7 weeks, the entire length of that tournament series. But there's thousands of people, so it's kind of hard for me to just run into him randomly.
Right.
And
You ever
I mean, he's like 15 years younger than me too, maybe a little more than that. So it's not like, like he's basically young enough to be my kid.
Right,
So
right.
I wasn't going out partying and stuff with him at any point in time.
You ever think about stepping back in the to the game, to the ring
What do you mean?
for the World Series of Poker? I mean,
I'm there every summer, all summer long.
You still actively play though?
Yeah, I'm there playing poker every day, all day long during the summer. And the rest of the year, I'm spending, 40% of the time out on the road, traveling around, teaching my seminars, competing. I just came home from a week in Houston where I played some poker tournaments at the Champions Poker Club. And I'll be heading to a place called Pearl River Resort in a couple of weeks for their tournament series. It's a casino in the middle of Mississippi. And I'll be plenty of other places throughout the year. So I still travel around, play poker full time. And even here at home, I play in home games that are technically illegal, but no one cares. Even the cops don't care.
Yep.
So
I got one last question from me is what are
the earth is round.
Yeah. Who are some of your favorite people to be at a table with?
I mean, I'll just pick the people who are the most fun to hang out with while you're playing. In terms of famous players, there's no one who I'm going to say, oh, I want him or her at my table, because if they're a famous poker player, then that means they're probably way above average. Yeah. Almost all of them are way above average in skill. I would rather have a whole bunch of really horrible players that are fun to play with and are basically making it easy for me to win their chips. I mean, that's, so it's like, oh, is Phil Ivey fun to play with? Yeah, fine, but he's a great player. I don't want him at my table. I'm hoping he's at a different table.
I can dig that. Yep. Okay, so let me rephrase it. Who are some of the funnest people to be around, like as far as those guys go?
I mean, most of them are nice, people. They're decent people. Some are just very quiet, keep to themselves. They don't really get involved in conversation and stuff. I kind of do like having, I mean, if you told me, Greg, you have to have one of these top players at your table, I probably would pick someone like a Phil Hellmuth, because now he draws all the attention to himself because he loves the attention, whether he's at the table or anywhere else in the world. And so now there's less, attention on me, and I can kind of sit back and just watch people play and try to maximize my chances of winning. Chris Moneymaker is great to have at the table. He's a nice guy. He's fun. He's very good at helping everyone else have fun while losing chips to him. And, so he's a great choice. But again, versus some random player who doesn't happen to be really good, and I just don't know them yet to know that, I would, rather have the random guy who's not good and is easy to beat. And so I even if I have a few names of people that fit that description, I'm not going to call them out like this.
Right. I feel like poker is one of those weird things where you're like trying to have a conversation, be friendly, but you're like, hey man, I'm trying to kick your ass and take your money. Like we all know we're here to take each other's money, right?
I want all your chips,
Right.
but I don't want all of your chips any more than I want all of the next player's chips or the one next to him, and so on. So like if the three of us are at the same table, I want all of each of your chips, and I don't want one of your chips more than the other.
And I don't want to give you none of mine. Right.
Yeah. You want all of mine. And so as long as no one's cheating, I'm like, perfect. We're all supposed to do our best to get the other guy's chips.
Well, with that being said, Coach, you got anything else?
No, just if anybody, wants to, if Greg wants to share or about his poker services and whatnot. I know we had a couple guys that reached out here in Monroe, including the Monroe County reporters, that were super excited about hearing this episode. So if Greg just wants to drop any links or where we can find his poker services.
Well, you can find me at I have my own website, fossilmanpoker.com, and I'm on Twitter at Fossilman. You can find me on Facebook as well, and you can contact me, Greg at fossilmanpoker.com by email. And I get all kinds of unusual random stuff, but it's not such a volume that it's overwhelming. I didn't give that email address out so freely 20 years ago, like right after I won, because I might have gotten several hundred emails a day of all kinds of stuff. But but now that big public, like you said, it was on ESPN like almost 24/7 back then, one ESPN channel or the other. And it hasn't been like that. The poker on TV has died down. It's not even 10% of what it was back in 04 and 05.
It's on FS1.
That was its big run. Its big run, and you won it right in the middle of its big run. We appreciate you, Greg, for coming on and sharing. I'm going to shoot you this link to the episode so you can share it and listen to it.
You can email it to me, or if you tag me on your social media, I'll see it, and I can retweet it or whatever, repost it on Facebook.
Definitely. As soon as we get out of here, I'm getting ready to follow you on Twitter. So I will talk to you soon. Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
Hey, thanks for inviting me on the show, guys.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. See you later.
Brought to you by BrainJerk. Fuck yeah.